There was an article from Metsmerized Online, and I hate to say the word triggered, but it elicited a reaction, a strong reaction from me. It compared this season's Mets, the 2023 Mets, to the 1992 Mets. And maybe some of you watching or listening aren't of the age where you remember the 92 Mets. And I think most of my audience is around the same age as me, 35 to 44, whatever. What have you. The 1992 Mets were a clusterfuck. They also had the highest payroll in baseball at $45 million. Oh man, the 90s. And they were 31-35 after 66 games. Eddie Murray came in. Willie Randolph was signed. Bobby Bonilla from the Pirates. We added Bret Saberhagen, 2-time Cy Young Award winner, through a trade for Greg Jeffries and Kevin McReynolds going to the Royals, which really, I remember 11-year-old me being steamed when that trade happened. Because despite what a lot of the fellow Mets players thought about Greg Jeffries, that came out way after the fact, and even some of them now have said they've regretted it, and they think that maybe they were too hard on him. I love Greg Jeffries. I mean, he was the guy who had me swinging a wiffle bat underneath the water in my pool because he did it. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. That's going to help me swing. And then Kevin McReynolds, I just love Kevin McReynolds so much because he seemed like he's kind of a biggish dude, but wasn't like, seemed kind of unassuming, but I just loved how he swung the bat and I loved how he hit homers. So it was a very sad day to see Jeffries and McReynolds leave, and to get Saberhagen back. You're like, well, at least we're getting Bret Saberhagen. And then it's like Saberhagen just completely fell apart. Our rotation was David Cone, Dwight Gooden, and Saberhagen, obviously. We let Frank Viola walk, which sucked, but we thought we were okay with Sid Fernandez and Pete Shurik, who I don't even remember Pete Shurik. Eddie Murray eventually hit 16 home runs, which is pretty bad, and almost 600 at-bats. Bonilla's average was 249. He hit 19 home runs. Hojo, my favorite player of that era, 223 average with just 7 home runs in just 100 games. David Cone was traded in August. Gooden posted 10-13 record. Saberhagen missed significant time, finishing with a 3-5 mark over 15 starts, and closer John Franco missed time due to injuries. So you see a lot of parallels and a lot of comparisons. Edwin Diaz, our closer in 2023, will miss a lot of time, probably the whole season. And I don't even know if we're going to make the playoffs. We brought in a Cy Young Award winner in Justin Verlander, who's missed time due to injuries. We have another Cy Young Award winner in Max Scherzer, who missed time due to injuries and might miss more time due to injuries. Who's to say that we don't trade one of our starting pitchers at the deadline? A guy that we thought we could count on posting a sub 500 record. Dudes that usually perform, not performing. And this is like the worst case scenario. You know, we talked about Baseball Reference and their 90% confidence in the best case scenario. Their worst case scenario has us with a 70-92 record. The 1992 Mets ended the season with a 72-90 record. So that would suck, because the 91-92 Mets and even the 93 Mets, maybe even the 94 Mets, it was not until the 96-97 Mets when you started to get a little more hope and optimism back in the organization. That stretch from 91 to 95 almost made me stop being a Mets fan. I was 11 through age 14. Those are some very formative years where you're associating with brands and making lifelong associations with certain brands. And like the Mets weren't looking so hot. It's like, oh, cool, Neil. So after 4 or 5 seasons of like basically being one of the best teams in the majors, you have a few down seasons, you're going to jump ship. It's like, I was a kid. What do you want? And it's like, then they start announcing the Colorado Rockies and Arizona Diamondbacks are entering the league. I'm like, interesting. It's like, you know, you start playing around and start thinking about other teams, because the 91 to 95 Mets were tough. But then we get like Lance Johnson, Bernard Gilkey, and we started to see some sparks that made me feel good. John Olerud in 97, and we get Piazza in 98, and so you start to go on that run. Where the 92 Mets differ from the 2023 Mets, there was and this is why I initially didn't read the article, and I just kind of brushed it off like, no way, because I remember the stories that were coming out about the 91 and 92 Mets. Vince Coleman, throwing fireworks at the media. There's guys with bleach and super soakers squirting people with bleach. And it was just a shit show. It was just a horrible clubhouse, just constantly getting in trouble. And so there's a lot of not so great vibes with that clubhouse. I don't get that sense with this clubhouse. You don't have stories coming out about this and that. And the media would be all over it. They wouldn't miss that. So that is where I see the big difference between the 92 Mets and the 2023 Mets. The 91 Mets also, I don't think, they definitely didn't make the playoffs, but I don't think they were, they went 77 and 84 and they finished fifth in the NL East. We had Bud Harrelson as our manager and then Mike Cubbage because Bud Harrelson got fired. And then in 92, we had Jeff Torborg. It was we didn't have Buck Showalter-esque type manager. And we didn't, last season we had 101 wins. That didn't happen in 91. So I think the expectations are for sure a lot different. It's tough for me to see this team going 72 and 90 or 70 and 92. I really do think 86 it's also got, pretty significant meaning for this franchise and this fan base. So I think 86 wins is the goal. Just set your mind to 86 wins. If we can get to 86 wins, I'm pretty sure it's a playoff spot. So when we say you got to believe, that's the number that pops out at you. 86, 86, 86. And every series, every game is a notch closer to that.